Hey everybody, it's Eric Dorward with the Spartan Rocketry Club. Starting on a new project today, we are going to be building the Estes Viking, which is this one right here. Sorry I don't have better details other than what's in their catalog, because it turns out we bought a bulk pack and it doesn't have a lot of artwork on it. In any event, maybe you can see it better here. This one is minimum diameter 18 millimeter rocket, and the fins are going to be made out of cardboard, cardstock really, and they come in. You can put up to 5 on it, maybe even 6 if we can spare one, but you get to choose how they're applied, so that ought to be fun. This is actually a pretty basic build. The only major issue I foresee here is getting the fins attached. Now, our first build that we did was a plastic set, so we didn't have to worry too much about that kind of thing. But this time we're actually going to have to cut out, so we're going to have to use a knife, we're going to cut these things out, and then we're going to glue them on. Now, that's going to be tricky because, as you can see, the cardstock is not thick. There's not going to be a lot of glue, a lot of purchase for our glue here. So that's going to be problematic. Anyway, we are, of course, following our instructions. The first thing it tells us to do is we need to deal with the nose cone. This is a really easy bit right here. This little thing here needs to be glued in there. It's plastic, so we need a little bit of our super awesome plastic cement here. So let's do that. First, I'm just going to put the tiniest little bit, spread it around on the inside. This is probably way more than we need, but we don't want this to come loose. If I were doing this myself, I would probably use crazy glue for this. However, crazy glue is not a very nice thing to use. So anyway, I put it in, I'm spinning it around. That ought to get the glue nice and distributed. That's all we need to do with the nose cone. So goodbye, nose cone. I also don't need this anymore. So goodbye, crazy toxic glue. All right, next step. We need to get the fins out of this. Now, we can use anywhere between 3 and 5, because that's how many they gave us. Since we're actually going to be building this together, there might be some spares if people only want to use 3. So we might be able to do up to 6, but that would be a little problematic with some of the instructions. Anyway, what we need to do is get these out. Now, the instructions say for us to sand this, but it's cardstock. We don't really need to sand this. The only issue that we're going to have is there are going to be some burrs in it. I don't want to cut right on my nice table, so I'm going to move some of the other parts here. We don't need right this instant, like the decals. We probably don't need these for a long time. Also, this one doesn't have a parachute, it has a streamer. We don't need that for a long time either. Let's put a nice piece of cardboard down so we're not cutting right on anything we care about. So I've got my knife right here. I'm going to bring this up really close. Hopefully it'll look in view. Here and here and here and here, you can see hopefully little burrs. We don't really need to cut the whole way along the line. All we really need to do is just cut where the burrs are, and things should fall apart. So I'm just going to pull the knife past each one of those little burrs. I don't need to actually do any real cutting here. So I've run the knife past, and this pops out pretty nicely. And if we look up close, that's actually pretty smooth. That's not bad at all. So I'm going to repeat the process. See if I can get all these burrs taken care of in a quick and not particularly boring, this isn't great video, but a fairly quick fashion here. Truthfully, we could probably just push these out with our fingers, but I want to use the knife because I would like to try to get the burrs cleaned up a little bit. And if we just push with our fingers, it might not come off as nicely as this one did. And those just fell out, so that's great. This, I'm actually going to hang on to this for a moment. The instructions then say that we should sand these. Now, if these were made out of balsa or some other kind of wood, we absolutely would. We'd line them like this. We'd get a piece of sandpaper, rub them smooth like that on each of the sides to get rid of the burrs. The burrs are really not that bad. I don't think this is probably a step we really need to do. So that's great. Cutting is done, so I can get rid of my knife too. And my cardboard, and just go back to my protective bit of newsprint here. Now, the next step. Normally, when we build a rocket where we actually have to glue the fins on, Estes is really nice about this. All the other companies seem to be too. They give you a little template, and you cut it out of the directions, and you wrap it around the tube, and then you get to mark where the fins are going to go. Because this one has so many different options, also because it's a pretty inexpensive kit, that's not really going to happen for us. Instead, in the instructions, let's actually get the shock cord out of there too. I'm going to bring this up a little closer. We have this. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to center the tube right around this, and where these arrows are, we're going to mark. If we wanted to do 3 fins, we'd use this and 1 for the launch lug. I think I'm going to go all out and do 5 fins. So I'm going to need to make 5 marks plus 1 for the launch lug. So I need a pencil, which I've got right here. Fantastic. I'll try to center this so you can see it reasonably well. I want to have my tube right in the middle. Now, if I'm squeezing the tube down at the bottom, it's going to deform and it's not going to be circular. So I'm going to try not to hold it right at the bottom, but hold it tightly enough and close enough so that I'm not unable to actually line things up with this. So this looks pretty good from what I can tell. I'm going to grab my pencil and I'm going to try to make a mark right at each one of these little indicators. And frankly, this is going to be a little difficult. This is why most kits give you something to wrap around the body tube, because getting your head in here, well, I got my head in the way. That's just going to have to happen. Oops. There we go. Like this one, I did a bad job with this. I know it happens to be this line here, not the streak, but even so, getting all those streaks or lines made is a little difficult. What I do want to do, though, is notice how there's a clump right here. I'm going to put an L next to the one in the middle to remind me that this is the launch lug. The other one should be pretty well evenly spaced around the body tube. We need to take this over to the door jamb and extend some lines so we can line things up correctly. Hopefully, remember, we did something similar to that on our first rocket build to get the launch lug on right. So at this point, I'm going to pause for a moment and go do that. Okay, I've got my lines extended pretty thoroughly here. I didn't take them the whole way to the end because I only really need them to line the fins up properly. Before I glue the fins on, in fact, gluing the fins on is probably going to be the last thing I do with this. So before I do that, I'm going to do a couple other little housekeeping items. One is, I'm going to grab my ruler here. Later on in the instructions, it says that I'm going to glue the launch lug on, and I'm going to glue it 2 inches from the base of the rocket. So I'm going to find my launch lug line. It's the one in the middle of these 3. And I am going to make myself a mark at 2 inches, as accurately as I can pull off. So right there, it's 2 inches on the launch lug line. While I have the ruler, I also need to put a piece of hardware into the tube for the motor. And it says to use this spacer, and I need to mark off 1/4 of an inch on the spacer. Now, I like my fingers big enough, so this is just about the right size. So I can just put my finger in and hold it like that, and 1/4 of an inch is right there, marked and done. So there we go. We're going to do this part now. So here's my body tube. This is the end where I made all the marks, so this is the end where the motor is going to fit. I need this little green piece. This is a motor mount. Well, it's not a mount, really. It's a retainer. It's an engine block. This is going to go inside the tube like so, and the motor is going to go, we're going to push it in until it hits this. This yellow thing is basically the length of the motor, so we want it to stick out a little bit. That's the deal with this. Now, in order to do this properly, I need to get glue inside here. To do that, I would normally use a piece of balsa, but I don't have any right now. So I'm going to take some of this. I'm going to cut myself basically like a little, there we go, a little tool here. I'm going to put some glue on the end of this and then put it in. I'm also going to put the glue on that piece of cardstock. It'll be nice, good place for it. We're going to be using wood glue. Why are we using wood glue? Because it's better than white glue. Oop, there we go. Yeah. And we don't need plastic glue. The plastic glue won't help us here. So I need to put glue approximately 2 inches into the body tube. So I'm going to make myself a little mark on this little scrap that I cut for myself too. So approximately 2 inches is about here. So I'm going to get glue on the tip and put it in about that far. And that ought to work. I'll get some wood glue, make myself a little bit of a puddle there. Scrape some glue up onto my tool. I'm going to use this kind of like a brush. Put it in here. And you probably will not be able to see this, but I'm basically just painting the inside of the body tube here with my wood glue. I'm going to try to get it as much around the inside as I can, and hopefully you'll be able to see what you're doing more or less. Hopefully you get a nice ring of wood glue in there. I'm going to use up all the stuff that I've got here. Wasn't a whole lot. That's just about the right amount. Okay, wood glue's in, engine block goes in. The instructions say use the yellow tube to push it in until you get to the line. You should feel the glue resist a little bit at some point. Then make sure you pull this out. If you leave this in, you won't be able to get your motor in. That'd be bad. Now, whether you can see this or not, I have no idea. Yeah. So the engine mount is in there, the block. That's it. I think this is a good place to stop for now, and we will glue the fins on in volume 2 of this encounter with the Estes Viking.